Chapter 3. The Locked Door. Mary woke to a high wind from the west and a thin, watery sun. After breakfast, during the usual morning housework, Mary was able to explore the inn more thoroughly. It was a dark place, with long passages and unexpected rooms. There was a separate entrance to the bar at the side of the house, and though the room was empty now, there was something heavy in the air from the last time it was full, a taste of old tobacco, the sour smell of drink, and the suggestion of warm, unclean people crowded one against the other on the dark wooden seats. Down a passage in the opposite direction from the kitchen was another room, the door of which was locked. Mary went out into the yard to look at it through the window, but there was a board nailed up against the window frame, and she could not see inside. The house and other buildings formed three sides of the square that was the little yard. Beyond this lay the road, a thin white track that stretched to the horizon, surrounded on each side by the moors, brown and wet from the heavy rains. Mary went out on the road and looked round her, and as far as the eye could see, there was nothing but the black hills and the moors. The grey stone inn, with its tall chimneys, was the only house in view. She went back into the house to find Aunt Patience. "Aunt Patience," she began, "why is my uncle the landlord of Jamaica Inn?" The sudden direct attack took the woman by surprise, and for a moment she looked back at Mary without reply. Then she went red. "Well," she said, it's a very important place here, on the road. You can see that. This is the main road from the south. The coaches pass here twice a week. There are always travellers on the road. We do good trade here." "How can you say that, when the rooms are never used, and the bedrooms are fit only for rats and mice? I've seen them for myself." Her aunt was silent for a moment, working her mouth and twisting her fingers together. "Your Uncle Jos doesn't encourage people to stay. We do a good trade, I've told you that. Men come in from the farms. There are farms and houses scattered all over the moors for miles around, and men come from there for a drink. There are evenings when the bar is full." The driver of the coach yesterday said that respectable people did not come to Jamaica Inn anymore. He said they were afraid. Aunt Patience changed colour. She was pale now, and her eyes moved from side to side. She swallowed and ran her tongue over her lips. "Your Uncle Jos has a quick temper," she said. "You have seen that for yourself. He is easily angered." Her eyes begged to be excused further questioning. Mary saw that she had suffered enough, but tried one more question. "Aunt Patience," she said, "I want you to look at me and answer me this, and then I won't worry you again. What has the locked room at the end of the passage to do with the wheels that stop outside Jamaica Inn by night?" As soon as she had spoken, she was sorry. A strange expression came over the woman's face, and her great hollow eyes looked across the table in fear. Her mouth trembled, and one hand wandered to her throat. Mary pushed back her chair and knelt by her side. She put her arms around Aunt Patience and held her close and kissed her hair. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be angry with me. It's not my business, and I've no right to question you. and I'm ashamed of myself. Please forget what I said." Her aunt buried her face in her hands. Then she looked over her shoulder, as if she were afraid that Joss himself stood in the shadows behind the door. "Things happen at Jamaica Inn, Mary, that I've never dared to breathe a word about. Bad things, evil things. I can't ever tell you. I can't even admit them to myself. Some of it you'll come to know in time. You can't avoid it living here. Your Uncle Joss mixes with strange men who follow a strange trade. Sometimes they come by night, and from your window you will hear footsteps and voices and knocking at the door. Your uncle lets them in, and he takes them along the passage to that room with the locked door. Before day they are gone, and no sign is left that they have ever been. When they come, Mary, you will say nothing to me or to your Uncle Joss. You must lie in bed and put your hands over your ears." Then she rose from the table and pushed her chair back, and Mary heard her climb the stairs with heavy feet. Joss Merlin was away from the house for nearly a week, and during that time Mary learnt something about the area. After helping her aunt in the house and kitchen, she was free to wander where she pleased. The moors were even wilder than she had at first supposed. Like a wide desert, they rolled from east to west, with paths here and there across the surface, and great hills breaking the skyline. It was a silent, empty country, untouched by human hand. On the high tors the stones leant against one another in strange shapes, great watchmen who had stood there since the hand of God first formed them. Wild sheep lived on the high tors. Black cattle fed on the moors beneath, their careful feet choosing the firm ground, as with inborn knowledge they avoided the long green grass that was not grass at all, but soft, dangerous marsh. There was a silence on the tors that belonged to another age, an age that is past and gone, as though it had never been, an age when man did not exist. One day Mary crossed the east moor, in the direction that Joss had described to her on the first evening. And when she had gone some way and stood alone on a hill, surrounded on all sides by empty moors, she saw that the land sloped down to a deep and dangerous marsh, through which ran a stream. And rising beyond the marsh, away on the other side, pointing its fingers to the sky, was a great rock like a broken hand coming straight out of the moor, its surface neatly formed, as if cut by an artist. So, this was Kilmar Tor, and somewhere over there, where the hills hid the sun, Joss Merlin had been born, and his brother lived today. Below her in the marsh, Matthew Merlin had been drowned. Mary turned her back on Kilmar and began to run across the moor. Nor did she stop until the marsh disappeared below the level of the hill, and the tor itself was hidden. She had come farther than she had intended, and the way home was long. It seemed an age before the last hill was behind her, and the tall chimneys of Jamaica Inn stood out in front of her. As she crossed the yard, she noticed with a sinking heart that the stable door was open and the horse was inside. Joss Merlin had returned. She opened the door as silently as possible, but it rubbed against the stone floor and made a noise in protest. In a moment, the landlord appeared and called to her as she started up the stairs to her room. Here, he said. No hiding up there this evening. There'll be work for you in the bar with your uncle. Don't you know what day of the week it is? Mary paused to think. She was losing count of time. Was it Monday's coach she had taken? That made today Saturday. Saturday night. Immediately she realised what Joss Merlin meant. Tonight, there would be company at Jamaica Inn.